Justin Fields is no longer the starting quarterback for the Shecago Bears. We're going to deep dive into all the reasons why. I'm Alexis Jade, and this is the Shecago Bears. Before we get started, I do want to give a shout out to the Barroom Network, specifically Aldo, for bringing me on to the show. It was a really fun time, and if you missed it, I went live with the guys at the Barroom Network, and we discussed the results from the Vikings game. We went over some things people around the media are saying, and we discussed our thoughts on Justin Fields and Tyson Bent. So if that's your cup of tea and you enjoy some good laughs and some good time, I highly recommend to go check that out. It's going to be in the link in my bio in the description of this video, so please go ahead and check it out and give them a follow. Now, we all know we had to do it at some point, so let's just go ahead and get started now and talk about what the hell happened with the Shecago Bears game against the Minnesota Vikings. The Bears obviously were coming off a strong performance against the Commanders where we won. Justin Fields was looking fluid. He was looking confident. He threw 4 touchdown passes, no interceptions. He had a great game. DJ Moore had 3 touchdown receptions, and the Bears offense looked like it was finally starting to find its groove. It was finally starting to hum. Luke Getsy looked like he was finally calling plays to Justin Fields' strengths, and it looked like we were finally headed in the right direction. The defense was still not great, but everything kind of started to look like it was on its way up. At least specifically talking, the offense looked like it was on its way up. However, enter the Minnesota game, where just when we started to get our hopes and expectations high, they plummeted again. Justin Fields and the starting offense struggled to make anything happen. It was as if they were not prepared for Minnesota's heavy blitz on defense. I don't know how, because it seems like everyone around the league besides our offensive coordinator and our head coaches knew that Minnesota was going to bring in the heavy blitz, and yet we didn't seem prepared at all. I'm not sure why, not sure how, and it doesn't quite make any sense to me. And you could tell on the field, we just looked ill-fully prepared. I know Cole Kmet did an interview on the CHGO podcast where he basically said that, it looked like they were just giving some, I don't know if he said disguises or some looks that they didn't exactly expect to see, or that kind of fooled them into thinking they're doing one thing or doing the other. They gave them a little more cover zero than they expected. But either way, at halftime even, they couldn't give any adjustments to help get the offense going. And it just all around was not a good performance from the offense. However, the defense finally started to come around. The defense had a great game. Maybe great is a stretch. I'm not sure if I should say great, but they had a good game. The best game I think they've had all season. And they were blitzing. They were getting third down stops. They were holding them to field goals. They were holding them to punting the ball. And obviously we know Justin Jefferson wasn't in the game, but regardless, the defense did its part. Eberflus got his squad together and they got them to rile up, and they did their job. And for once this season, or honestly since Justin Fields has been the quarterback, the defense has done their job and the offense did not do theirs, which is even more disappointing coming off of the previous game where the offense was finding its groove. And if they could have just carried that over into this week, we could be talking about a win right now. But that didn't happen. The very first play of the game, Justin Fields was sacked. It came around his blind side. However, it was a free rusher. They were rushing 6. We had 5 at the line. So I don't know whose fault that falls on. It seems like it's on Justin Fields' fault for not sliding and hitting his out, but I don't know. I don't know anything anymore, especially with the way our plays go and the way everyone just looks all confused and like no one knows what they're doing. So I don't know anymore. I don't know who to blame, and I guess on that one we can give it to Justin Fields, but it wasn't just him. He didn't have a great game, and he was struggling against the blitz. He was struggling with getting the ball out quickly. He was holding on to the ball for too long, as we all know, and it just wasn't a great performance by him. However, he wasn't the only one to blame. The offensive line was abysmal, which is just crazy. Well, it's not crazy. I mean, as you would know if you've been watching the videos, since day one, I've said the offensive line is my concern. I've never felt confident with it. I've always felt like we were one injury away from just a terrible offensive line, and I think I was right. But the offensive line was a stark contrast from what it was the previous week against the Commanders, where they looked stoic, they looked strong. Commanders have a good defensive front, and we were barely letting them through. They barely got contact on Justin Fields, and yet somehow we go into this week and they completely fall apart. It's like they did some body swap episode and suddenly they didn't know how to play offensive line anymore. They had no stop for the blitz, and it's not even just the blitz that they were letting through. Sometimes they were just letting untouched men run through the offensive line, and it was like no one knew who they were supposed to be assigned to. It was just a complete mess. Then the only other worse outcome that could come up from that game, besides a terrible loss, happened. Justin Fields got hurt. He was moving outside of the pocket from a rush and got sacked on the play, landed awkwardly on his hand. We weren't sure what happened at first, but obviously we all saw the news reports by now. His right thumb dislocated. He was able to pop it back in, but we still don't know the results of the thumb injury yet and what that means for his timetable of return. We're going to dive into that a little bit more later on in the podcast, but needless to say, Justin Fields gets hurt, and now it's Tyson Bagent time. I honestly don't think there's too much to say on the whole Tyson Bagent experience in the last game. It's really hard to judge his performance off of limited playing time he had on top of the situation he got put into, which is coming in the middle of a second half of a game. Starting quarterback gets hurt. He's a Division II rookie, never played an NFL snap besides a few in the preseason. I mean, he was coming in rusty. So big shoes to fill, big moment to come in, and against a divisional opponent. So, he was kind of just thrust into the fire. But he played how I expected him to play, like a rookie who's never really played in the NFL before. I think he had a lot of poise, and he seemed really confident, and he got the ball out quick, which I think we all have seen circulating, that everyone knows that Tyson Bagent got the ball out quick. I will say he obviously had some moments where he wasn't able to connect on a few deep shots. It seems like he had some floaters, some balls that just didn't look like he had enough arm strength to get them there, which I don't believe, based on his scouting report, that ever seemed to be a problem for him, was arm strength. There's my cat right there. I don't believe arm strength ever seemed to be a problem, so maybe it was the pass rush, maybe it was just first game jitters, who knows, but I think we'll find out more the more we might see him play. But I would also say he did get the ball out quick, which is good, and that's part of his MO. However, he definitely was stuck on his first read, and it was either dump off or chuck it to the first guy he saw, and some of those were not the best decision. But once again, there's really, you can't dissect into all of this. I mean, there's going to be mistakes. There's going to continue to be mistakes, but I had no expectations with him going in, and I thought he did a decent job. Now, what I'm looking for going forward from Tyson Bagent is I'm going to look to see if he can connect on some of those deep shots downfield, if he can get a little bit more power under those throws. I would like to see him throw some lasers on some tight window throws and maybe some anticipation and working through some progressions, because I've seen some comments about how he's able to process quicker than Justin Fields. I don't think that's true. I also think people undervalue maybe undervalue is the wrong word, but I feel like people tend to say that Justin Fields can't process the field, which I don't actually think is true. I think he does go through his progressions, and you see that when you watch the film back. He just holds on to the ball too long and doesn't let it loose when he should, but he is going through his progressions. Tyson Bagent, I didn't see him go through his progressions. I just saw him going to his first read or the check down, which is fine. That's where he's at right now. I'm not saying that is a negative thing or he won't go through progressions. I'm just saying going forward, I would like to see more of him actually working through some progressions. Now, as we're talking about Tyson Bagent, that leads us to our next little segment here, where we get into the little NFL news of the week, and that kind of leads us into news of the week that happens to do with the Bears. Justin Fields, right thumb injury sustained against Minnesota last week, and we do not have a timetable for return yet. Matt Eberflus said, when asked what it's looking like for Justin Fields, he said his thumb swelling is gone down, which is good, but they won't know till the end of the week if he will be able to play or what the timetable is going to look like. Some people go through surgery for this type of thing. Other people are able to tape it and play through it. within 2 weeks. It depends on the severity of the injury, depends on the swelling, depends on if Justin Fields can grip the ball, which obviously, it being his throwing hand, is pretty important. So that's kind of what Eberflus gave us. And then he gave us this little tidbit when asked, is surgery still on the table for Justin Fields? Which, if so, that would be season-ending surgery, unfortunately, for Justin Fields. And Matt Eberflus responded, nothing is on the table, but nothing is off the table. So we won't know until later in the week. So in other words, the table is floating in the air and no one knows what's going on. And Justin Fields might be back in 1 to 2 weeks, might be season ending. We really hope it's not season ending because obviously we know what that leads into. And I'm purposely not diving into all the whole trade talk proposals and will we, won't we trade for the first or trade Justin Fields when we have the first overall pick and so on and so forth. Because so much of this there's so many factors to all of this that in itself could be a whole separate podcast, which maybe I'll do once we know Justin Fields' timetable and what that's looking like. But right now, I'm just going to let it sit for a bit. I think I've heard a lot of people talking about it ad nauseum, seen a lot of people talking about it on Twitter or X. So I'm going to just kind of let that one settle a bit. And then when we know more, I'll speak on my thoughts on what might play out. But from what we know, Tyson Bent is expected to play Sunday. Justin Fields is listed as doubtful for Sunday's game, which we know means Tyson Bagent's going in. And from now on out, until we know otherwise, Tyson Bagent is our starting quarterback. So I'm excited to see what the kid can do. I think he's finally getting his chance in the NFL sooner than he probably ever thought he would. So we'll see how he does. I think it'll be an exciting time. And at the very least, if our starting quarterback is going to be down, at least we have a developmental quarterback as a backup to kind of get to watch and see how he does. In other injury news, Anthony Richardson has officially announced that he will be getting season-ending surgery on his shoulder. It is his throwing shoulder, which is why it was this whole big decision he had to make if he was going to try to rehab it for a bit and go back in, or if he was going to get the surgery now so he could be healed for next season. And it sounds like between talking with the people on his staff with the Colts and with his own family, that the best decision was to get the surgery now so that he is healed up for next season. Therefore, rookie quarterback Anthony Richardson for the Colts will be out for the rest of the season with the shoulder injury, but I wish him a speedy recovery, and I think he's a great prospect, and we'll see where he goes next season. Another NFL-wide news is NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell has reached a new contract extension, so he will remain the NFL Commissioner through 2027 with a guesstimate of $60 million a year. The official amount I don't believe has been announced yet, but that seems to be the contract that was negotiated, which I guess depending on your thoughts on and opinions on Roger Goodell, I don't really have that strong of an opinion one way or the other on this one. But I think he's done a decent job of increasing revenue to the NFL and, spreading it to Europe, which I think is really cool initiative that the NFL is trying to do is spread it. Maybe spread it's the wrong word, but bring the NFL to Europe, which I think is a cool initiative as well. So, we'll see where it goes for the next few years. And then maybe we'll have a new commissioner, maybe we won't, but, congrats on the contract extension. My last little bit of news around the NFL here is kind of a positive note. Kyler Murray from the Cardinals is officially coming back from IR, and he tweeted, "I will be practicing today." So I think you could take the word straight from the source that Kyler Murray is back and will be practicing and potentially playing for the Arizona Cardinals again this upcoming Sunday when they play. I believe they have a Sunday game, but congrats, but good for him on healing up and being able to get back this season. And I know he's fighting for his spot on this roster as well, depending on the Cardinals situation in the draft. So good luck to Kyler. I hope he does well. And I thought it'd be nice to, with the 2 injuries going in, that we'd kind of end the little NFL news break on a player returning from injury. So now, before we get into my score prediction for Sunday against the Raiders, I decided we're going to change things up and we're going to do an NFC North game prediction for Sunday. So, starting it all off, the Detroit Lions versus the Baltimore Ravens. Now, as we all know, the Detroit Lions are leading the division and most likely are winning the division, as much as it pains me to say this. But I suppose if it's not going to be the Bears, the other team that kind of deserves to finally win the division would be the Lions, but I don't really want to give it to them yet. But needless to say, they're a good team right now. You can't deny it. And they are playing the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens have a good defense, but a struggling offense. They have flashes where they seem to be getting it together, but they can't seem to fully put it together yet. Whereas the Lions, obviously, their offense is humming right now. Jared Goff and this offense is getting the job done week in and week out on a consistent basis, and their defense ain't too shabby either. Now, obviously, for the Lions, David Montgomery is out with, I believe, a rib injury. But even so, the Lions still have Jahmyr Gibbs, their running back that they drafted in this past year's draft, that has yet to see that much playing time. So now's his moment to shine and fill David Montgomery's shoes to get this win. All that being said, I do think that this could be a surprise upset win for the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I almost picked them, but I did go with the Lions with a 23-19 win over the Ravens. I thought it would be semi-close. Now, this does still seem like if this is a game where the Ravens offense decides to get it together, they could sneak out a win here and upset the Detroit Lions. But for now, I'm going to go with 23-19 for the Lions. Now, the next game in the NFC North matchup is the Packers versus the Broncos. Now, we know all about the Broncos. We played them already this season. We all know how that went. So I think it's one really, really bad team versus a bad team. So it's an interesting matchup because originally I would think most people would definitely pick the Broncos to win this one. However, the Packers have not looked the sharpest lately, and they are coming off of a bye. However, in Packers history, they tend to come off on a slow start after a bye. So I kind of also was a little bit of a toss-up with this one. I feel like the Packers should win, but I was really tempted to take the upset on the Broncos getting this win. I don't know why. I feel in my gut that there might be an upset win this week somewhere in our division, and my gut was almost telling me to pick this one, but I didn't. I did pick it to be a close game, though. I have Packers 20 and Broncos 16. I think it will be a close game. I think the Broncos defense started to get a little bit better when they played the Chiefs. Surprisingly, they were able to hold Patrick Mahomes to less points than they were Justin Fields. So I would say they looked a little bit more put together, like they had a better plan established. They're still not a good defense, but I think if they can hold Patrick Mahomes to that many points, if they can keep up what they did against the Chiefs, they should be able to hold Jordan Love to similar yardage touchdown ratio, if not less. But I don't know how confident I am about this Broncos offense against this Packers defense. So therefore, I do think the Packers are going to win this one 20-19. Next up, Minnesota. Minnesota versus San Francisco. I do not think this will be an upset win. I think this one should be pretty straightforward. Minnesota should take the cake on this one. They're the better offense, the better defense, better personnel, better coaching. I would be shocked if Minnesota comes and wins this one, but it's the NFL and you never know. However, I definitely picked the 49ers to win this one. We were in a close game with Minnesota, so if that's saying anything, that's saying Minnesota's not that great of a team either. So I'm going 49ers. So I'm going 49ers 28-17 for the win, which does make the Minnesota Vikings still only one win above us in the division. Obviously, that one win being against the Bears, but still a division we can maybe climb ourselves back up on, especially if the Packers do get upset and lose against the Broncos. It's a really tight race for last place there in this division. Now, finally, the moment we've all been waiting for. My prediction for the Bears-Raiders game this Sunday at noon. It'll be a close one. I anticipate this to be a close matchup. This game has always kind of been circled on my calendar as a winnable game. One I thought we should win when the season first started. I chalked it up to a definitely win. Now it's a we could win this one. But all that being said, I think the biggest one is obviously Crosby on the Raiders defense is the biggest one to look out for. However, their secondary is not that sharp. So I do think if Justin Fields, we do not have Justin Fields. So if Tyson Bajent and Luke Getsy can work together to make an offensive scheme happen to beat this Raiders team, I do think we could squeak out the win. However, I do have the Raiders winning this one 23-21. I have it as a really close game, and I wouldn't be surprised if somehow, now that Justin Fields is injured, we manage to squeak out a win because we're going against a really bad team. Now, for Tyson Bajent, I hope that's the case because he deserves a first NFL career win. However, I do question this is the kid's first full start in the NFL. I think there's definitely going to be some bumpy roads. There might be a fumble. There might be a few interceptions that could end up swaying the game back in the Raiders' favor, which is why I actually have them winning 23-21. If you agree with my picks and you like them, you should definitely like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you don't and you hate them, you should still subscribe and like to the channel because I post videos every week on this podcast, and I will be posting soon on my main account, Alexis Jade, on YouTube as well for a series that I will be doing, and it's super exciting, and I thank you all for watching. So I really appreciate the support, and the comments really help with the algorithm, so I really appreciate anyone who stays tuned to the video. Now, these are my predictions for the NFC North. Now these are my final predictions for the NFC North matchups this Sunday, which would just put the Lions one more step ahead in owning this division, and the Packers one more game above us, which is really not what we need, but it seems to be inevitable at this point. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please let me know in the comments what your predictions are for this game against the Raiders this week, or what your predictions are for the NFC North this week. I appreciate the support. Thank you all for watching. I hope you have a good weekend, and go Bears. This is Alexis Jade, and this has been the Shecago Bears.